Hello everyone. In this video, we're going to work through an example speaking part 2 question and identify how you can improve your grade in the test by expanding your answers effectively so you can speak at length and linking your ideas in a cohesive way. So let's start with the question. Remember, in the exam, you need to read the question carefully to help you to achieve a higher score. Our question today is, describe a TV documentary you watched that was particularly interesting. You should say what the documentary was about, why you decided to watch it, what you learned during the documentary, and explain why the TV documentary was particularly interesting. So I could answer this whole question by saying the following. I watched a documentary called Cosmos because my husband wanted to watch it. I didn't learn much, but it was interesting because of the way it was presented. Now, this does cover all of the question prompts, but it only takes about 12 seconds to say out loud, and it is a pretty boring answer. Given that I have up to 2 minutes for my monologue in the test and I want a high score, I need to expand that answer to make it more interesting. So, how could I expand my answer? Let's have a look. Regarding the what the documentary was about prompt, I said, I watched a documentary called Cosmos. Some options for expanding this answer include giving more detail about who made the show, or maybe giving more detail about when I watched it. So, let's have another go. A few years ago, I watched a documentary called Cosmos, presented by Neil deGrasse Tyson. We watched it online during the COVID lockdown, and I remember that we binge watched all of the episodes within about a week. This is a much more informative response, which includes a lot more detail and hence showcases more vocabulary and more grammar, including some clear references to time, which give my answer a more concrete and realistic feeling. Now, let's move on to the why you decided to watch it prompt. My initial answer was because my husband wanted to watch it, which, although accurate, is way too short. A good way to expand my answer here is to give more detail about why he wanted to watch it. So let's have another try. Initially, I started watching it because my husband suggested it. He's a massive sci-fi geek and an indie author, so he reads and watches a lot of stuff on science and space-related topics. However, by the end of the first episode, I was hooked and wanted to keep watching. Not only is this a longer response, but it also demonstrates linking language, referring to both time and reason for doing something, which helped to build a more cohesive answer. Moving on to the what you learnt during the documentary aspect, my initial answer was, I didn't learn much, which feels like a very dismissive answer, to be honest, and definitely needs expanding. So my revised answer might be, although the documentary was full of useful information, I didn't really retain any of it as I was watching more to relax than to learn. Personally, if I'm going to remember facts, I have to make an effort, such as writing things down and then reviewing them. I'm always amazed by people who can watch something once and then remember the details. This is a much better answer because it's longer and makes use of much more complex grammar, such as conditional and relative structures. Let's finish with the final point about why the TV documentary was particularly interesting. I initially said it was interesting because of the way it was presented. My answer here doesn't really say much, and you're left guessing about how it was presented. So that gives a clue as to how I can expand my answer. Here is the expanded version. To say this documentary was interesting would be the understatement of the century. It was fascinating, spellbinding even. The presenter, Neil deGrasse Tyson, is a really charismatic guy who has a great style of storytelling. On top of this, the visual effects they used to move him around the cosmos were breathtaking, and coupled with amazing music, it created a stunning show. It was the perfect way to escape from the reality of the COVID lockdown. So, this is a radically improved answer, which gives a much more complete picture of why I enjoyed the show. You can see that I slipped in a variety of adjectives, a few linking phrases, and something idiomatic too, all of which will help to score a higher band. So I timed myself reading the expanded version of the answer at a slightly slower pace to account for thinking time, and it took 1 minute 40 seconds, which is within the 1 to 2 minutes allowed in the test. And more importantly, the answer is more thoroughly developed and demonstrates a higher level of control of the language. Before we finish, just a little tip about things you don't remember. As you saw, I expanded my initial answer of I didn't learn much into a much more developed response by saying why. You can apply this technique to other questions in part 2 as well. Rather than just saying you don't know something, talk around it instead. For example, if you're talking about a book that you read and you don't recall the author's name, you can talk around the topic by saying what you do know, or giving a little reason for not remembering. It will make your answer longer, and let's face it, we're human and have fallible memories. The examiner does not expect you to remember everything about your life. They just want to hear you speaking English. So, now it's your turn. Have a go at writing your own answer to this example question, then read it out loud and time yourself. See if you can get as close to 2 minutes as possible, and then read it out loud a few more times. I hope you found that useful, and don't forget to check back for new episodes soon. Thanks for watching, and have a lovely day.